Welcome to Dumb and Drummer episode 10. And we have our esteemed guest, Eric Carraway. And you are in Germany right now, right?
That's right. I am in Stuttgart, Germany. It is a little after 7 p.m. right now. So, yeah, what time is it where you are?
It is about noon.
Yeah.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, Stuttgart, Germany.
Awesome, awesome. So tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, my name is Eric Carraway. Online, I go by the moniker Percussio. And I do work at the intersection of music and technology, some creative coding work, software development. So my full-time work is as a software developer. And then my creative work is kind of under this Percussio moniker, this Percussio brand. And I do a lot of, as I said, creative coding, music visualizations, transcriptions. The kind of place where I share most of that work is on social media. So I've done a lot of transcriptions and visualizations and just really enjoy doing that work.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say in a world of a lot of carbon copies, you definitely have a unique voice and a way to stand out from not only a like the Konnakol stuff that you do. For again, if you're listening, you don't know what Konnakol is. It's a very advanced, very where did he originate from? Is it?
Chronicle is from like southern India.
Oh yeah,
So
I was like I thought it was Indian.
yeah, so in the Carnatic classical tradition, which is like the traditional classical music in the southern part of India. Conical is this kind of it's this methodology of kind of how the some of the percussion instruments are taught. It's a way of like vocalizing rhythms with syllables. There's also a clapping component
And
that
there's like clapping up and down too.
right,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's which makes it extremely complex.
Yeah. So there's like two parts to it. There's the if you there's like the vocal, if you can think of it as melody, but like the vocal rhythmic part, and then you could think of what the hands do is kind of like harmony, but it
Mhm.
that lays like kind of the time cycles or the tala. So we our equivalent in the Western world would be like time signature. It's
Mhm.
not a one-to-one translation, but it's basically time signature in the hands with clapping, and then um, the composition is dictated with these vocal percussion. So
Yeah, and
syllables and
it's super interesting because it's also probably the most advanced independence exercises as well. Because you're literally doing, I don't know if there's a melodic element to it because it's more like a
Mhm.
da, and it seems like it's all in the same pitch. But yeah, definitely check out the Conical videos on the channel. I know you've done some really awesome animation with that as well. But
Mhm.
it's one of those things like it's interesting that we're starting the conversation with this because I don't think I would have discovered like BJ or
Yeah,
anybody who's really
yeah.
really big
BC.
in that industry without your channel like seeing your
Yeah.
videos is what kind of got me into it or piqued my
That's
interest on it.
It's been like my favorite part of the project. I mean, the collaborations and meeting people, but also sharing, just like sharing what maybe kind of like this nerdy, complex music with a much wider audience.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, there's just like for percussionists, there's so much complexity there. There's so much that you could deep dive into to just experience like rhythm at its highest degree of complexity.
Would you
And
say that's the style is the most
for
complex?
sure, for sure. Yeah. Well, you have
it's
to take
it's
like,
very advanced.
yeah, well, we have, in a lot of other musics around the world, you have melody, you have harmony, you have rhythm, texture, all of these other. So imagine taking like all of that complexity, and if it was just one to one the same, like taking all of that complexity but just doing it in rhythm. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of beauty there. There's a lot of, yeah, as I said, complexity. But what I really like is taking what might be, harder for somebody who doesn't have a background in that to understand. Like, at first glance, if you hear it, maybe without any, like, I've done a lot of transcription and put Western notation under the videos, and
Mhm.
also some animations to show the different rhythmic cycles. I think without those visual aids, if you weren't trained in that tradition, it's not immediately accessible. It's
Yeah.
not 4/4 3 chord pop
Right.
music. Like it's
151 working
very,
songs or something. Yeah.
yeah, it's very complex. But there are ways to you know like dive into it, and maybe through some visual aids, through this education component, like many more people can experience the music and kind of have a better understanding than they would without without it being presented without those aids. So
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point because I don't consider myself like that accomplished. I mean, I've been playing for a couple decades, but I mean, there's still a lot that I want to do. And your channel, I'd say, is accessibility is like the word of the
mhm.
day when I think about your content because like you have marching videos, which you've done. I think one of my favorite videos is you have a tenor player. He's playing quads, and then you animated it, and we talked about MIDI
Yeah.
mapping and how insane that is, and no one has done anything like that. I mean, in a very technical, like mathematical approach. Maybe like there's like drum animations where you hit the snare. There's actually a channel I found after our
Mhm.
conversations about MIDI mapping and stuff called Drum Animation on Instagram. You should check that out, where he
Mhm.
does animation of like marching band and stuff like that. But that's more of a entertainment, like visual component. Yours is like a mathematical, educational, accessibility component, which I really do enjoy. And then like the animation you do with marimba, as well
Mhm.
as the marching stuff. And we've teamed up on some transcriptions that have been awesome as well. That have kind of been, I mean, they're still educational, but they're more like fun. They're more like this.
Yeah.
This is cool. I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna. Oh, I really enjoyed it as I'm scrolling. So you have different colors and textures in your content, which I really appreciate.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But your theme is still, in my opinion, musical accessibility, like international
Yeah.
musical accessibility.
I think there are these kind of it's 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 like two sides of the same coin, that I really like complex music. Like some of the stuff that we've transcribed together and shared with people are like just very complex drum solos, very complex music, but presenting it in such a way that it kind of embraces the absurdity, like it
Yeah.
embraces how do we take this thing that at first glance no one would like, a typical general audience member wouldn't necessarily appreciate or understand, and how do we take this thing that's like so absurdly complex and off the wall and like present it in such a way that it's just normalized. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, like there's no reason that all musics can't be, accessible. Like accessibility and complexity don't have to be these like mutually exclusive things.
Well, I mean, and depending on who you ask, that may not be the case because I mean, especially if you look at drums. I mean, if you're not a drummer, you look at a drum set and you're like, how could you ever do that? I mean, how could everything's doing every limb's doing a different thing, and you have to, and then you have these really complex, progressive bands, and you're like, okay, well, the music is really complicated as well. So it's like accessibility really isn't the first word
Mm-hmm.
that comes to people's minds when they think about instruments in general, but I mean drums especially because I mean I don't know another instrument where you're doing each limb is doing four different things. I mean,
Yeah.
a guitar, you have your two hands doing different things, and I'm
Yeah.
oversimplifying, but you have been a band director and you've done marching percussion as well. So tell us about the background in those terms.
Yeah. So I went to school for music. I was really involved in marching, percussion, band in high school. Um, yeah, went and got a music education degree for my bachelor's, and then did my master's in percussion performance. And after that, after I graduated, was a high school band director in Texas. So taught music full time, full time teaching job from 2005, maybe, all the way up until 2014. And then in 2014, after a couple of years of teaching myself programming and doing various tutorials, made an industry change to go from being a full-time band director to being a full-time software developer. So
Nice.
that's what I do now is software development, programming, coding. I had early exposure to programming in high school, and it was actually also kind of doing music projects back then. Like one of the first things I ever remember programming was in the computer lab at school and taking Nirvana's Nevermind album had just come out. This is like 94, 95, somewhere around then, and
Yeah.
had programmed like a couple tracks from that album in like using, it was either Basic or Turbo Pascal or something like that. So had a really good programming teacher in high school, but kind of got away from that when I focused on music, went to school for music. And it was, a few years into teaching that I was working on, making things for my students. I had ideas of making these visualization programs, like things that I could build for my students to help in the teaching and learning process. And just got to the point where, the more involved I was with that and realizing that to be able to kind of build these things that I am visualizing in my head, these things that I'm thinking of, I really need to learn how to code. So I started that and just doing free tutorials and really immediately fell in love with it. Just that same excitement I had for it in high school was just rejuvenated, re-energized. And after a couple of years of that, then kind of decided that I wanted to go do that full time.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm kind of just hybrid musician, programmer, but also have a real interest in education and in a background in education.
Yeah, definitely. I think we covered that before. Educational, accessible, entertaining, things like that on the page. But it's awesome we're thousands of miles away from each other, but you used to live in the same town as me, essentially. You used to live in the Austin area, right? I mean, did you teach here in Austin?
I did. So I went to UT Austin for 2 years, and then I taught at a high school in Austin called Aikens High School. It's in South Austin. So I was there from '05 through the end of the '06-'07 school year.
Awesome. So as far as 2021, what other big projects do you have lined up?
I can kind of break that into categories. So in my professional life, I'm actually starting a new full-time job. So I've been kind of with the same, I've been working for a digital agency for the last little over 4 years. We kind of focus in the media streaming industry, and lately been working on some collaborative tools for people in the media industry. But I am starting in a couple weeks with a new company, or a new for me company, a startup based in New York called Splice, and they make tools for musicians. It's a platform where you have a monthly subscription and you can download loops and samples. So a lot of producers use it. There's integrations with Ableton Live, for example, Logic Pro, Fruity Loops. So it's like digital audio workstation tools, but they also have several other, products that the company offers that make collaboration easier for musicians, make the music creation process easier for musicians. So I'm working with them in their new products division as a software developer.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I'm excited to for a while, my kind of like professional day to day, hasn't really intersected with musicians and the music
Yeah.
industry. So
Yeah.
I'll still have my, the things that I do my under my own like kind of moniker, the things like the artistic projects that I do as percussio. But I'm excited that my full time work will now can be like in service of musicians and
Yeah.
yeah.
That well, and having that as your brand, because I mean, it's like, not to knock the educational component, but if you're just doing one thing, I
Mhm.
know a lot of people, they get burned out. I mean, you can't. I mean, how many years can you be just a band director and not do any special projects or lessons or anything like that, or you're putting out educational content? And I mean, I'm sure people can do that. I mean, people can be a band director for
Mhm.
decades, and
Yeah.
they're fine. But it's like, I know for me, I'm like, I don't want to be pigeonholed into one thing. Like, and I want my brand to be around something didactic. I want it to be around something obviously in the percussion community. And by percussion, I don't mean like mallet instruments, because I just never gravitated towards them. But I mean like marching percussion. I mean, I still occasionally gotta bust out the traditional grip and do a video or something. And collaborations are awesome. I love writing music. I love transcribing to a certain extent, all that kind of stuff. And then like what you're saying earlier is just being able to make like different connections, like
Mhm.
either through a different interface, different software, different company, different people that you're working with.
Yeah.
It's all connected. Um, I do have a question that's not on the list. As far as everybody you've worked with, now I know I'm your favorite person to
Yeah, for
collaborate with,
sure. For
100%. I'm,
sure.
I'm at the top of that list. But what are some other examples of people that you've really enjoyed doing projects with?
Oh, yeah. I don't know that I want to call out like specific individuals, but I've really enjoyed the variety and the chance to do like to collaborate with people all over the world, like in different musical genres. So, and that's something I like wouldn't have necessarily expected when, starting to post stuff online, kind of as percussio under this umbrella. Because my focus, yeah, has been largely the academic side
Mhm.
of music. I went to school for music. I primarily play keyboard percussion instruments. So, the opportunity to, work with people who just have an entirely different approach, different upbringing. There's different educational systems. I kind of grew up learning to read music, and I really enjoy the transcription process and writing things out. So to collaborate with people whose entire system is based on, it's maybe an oral tradition or it's a different way of writing, or there's a heavy improvisation component. Um, so to collaborate with those people who it's just not Western classical music. It's either, you know, pop music or the Konnakol stuff or, yeah, some different like Brazilian things like samba music. There's percussion in every culture. Like every musical tradition has percussion, and that has kind of been the thread that ties it together. Um, but yeah, just the variety. Yeah, I really like appreciate the variety.
It kind of reminds me of like food.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I talked to like the last guest was like, I make breakfast tacos every day. It's like I always eat breakfast tacos, and I'm like, I love breakfast tacos. I mean, they're amazing. It's just like, as far as music, do you just listen to the same like Steely Dan album every day? You just it never leaves the record player. You
Yeah.
just put the needle down. It's like, how fucking boring is that? You know what I mean? Like you want to you want to change it up a little bit, but for the educational component, and I'm glad we're definitely covering this. I figured we would, but there's a lot of content out there that isn't educational really at all. I mean, there's an implied element of education, but with the variety, you can also do like like this is just something cool that I want to do. Like you had a video that came out recently where you did a circle. The notes are in a circle,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it was trippy, but you did it to like a pop song, and
Hmm.
so like it wasn't Konnakol and it wasn't some marching band cadence or some crazy David Parker like etude for marching snare drum. It was just like a pop song, and so you could see like the bass line and stuff like that, and when you change the key, and so that could just be like entertaining, but to somebody else it could be educational. Like, oh, I want to get
Hmm.
into like animation, or it could be educational. Like, I never knew that was the bass line, or that's in B flat major, or whatever. So there's so many different things that you can do. So
Hmm.
I guess I personally don't understand it when people are just like, I only play in my country cover band, and that's it. Like I don't read, I don't write, or there's just so much more to experience
For
that
sure.
is,
Yeah.
and all of it is so fun that I'm like, you should go and try these other things and add some variety.
That's that's been one of the biggest challenges too on my end is like challenging myself to, if I've got an idea for like my next project, like what is it going to be? Because there have been stretches of time where I've I don't want things to get formulaic. Where it's just it's a video of somebody's performance and I've like transcribed it, so there's scrolling notation under it. So I've been thinking more about how to present, if even if it's still music notation, like how to present that in a different way. So you mentioned the rotating like music
Circle.
notation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a combination of a few things I've been trying to figure out for a while. One is um, like how to take like music notation and wrap it around a circle. So if you can imagine, the case that you're referring to is this tune by the electronic music duo Disclosure, and I think it's either a 4 measure or an 8 measure bass loop, and it's the same 4 bars over and over again. And I had transcribed it and taken the sheet music, the single staff, and then wrapped that around a circle
Mm-hmm.
and then rotated the circle in time so that, one revolution every 4 bars. So, and then the melody is scrolling across the top. So it's just something I like had visualized and wanted to see. And yeah, just the technical challenge of it was something that I had been like battling with for a while. And I think it's an interesting musical idea too, to show this idea of how a lot of electronic music is done with loops. There's a lot of repetition.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I remember reaching out to you. This is probably 2 or 3 years ago about software to use for notation because the first transcription I ever did was the Afolabi Emmanuel drum solo that
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of went viral and everything. And I didn't know. I mean, I knew about Finale. Like I used Finale print
Mhm.
music for a while, like the cheap, you know, entry level software in like 2006, and I had taken a bunch of handwritten cadences and moved them into the software. But there was a time where I was like, well, I want to write out these drum solos and I want to like write out my cadences and stuff, but I want to make it animated. Like I want to have it, because I had seen other people do that, and I think they were
Mhm.
using like Muse Score and a couple of things that I didn't try out. And not to knock those companies, it just didn't. Sometimes the software just doesn't work for you. You get in there, you just don't like the interface or whatever. And I think you were the first person to tell me about SoundSlice, and
Yeah. It's a great tool.
this is pre Drumeo, where Drumeo uses SoundSlice
Mhm.
exclusively or almost exclusively for all the animated stuff on their page and for their members and stuff like that. But it was just like it was like a big moment in my musical journey was
Mhm.
finding this and releasing that video because it's the same thing you're talking about. It's like I really want to do this. I'm envisioning this, and I have this
Yeah.
crazy idea. And at the time, you're like, I don't know what it's going to take. to get there. I don't know how long it's gonna take. I don't know who I got to reach out to. Maybe this project is gonna make me reevaluate doing this shit moving forward at all. Like, this might just be like the one thing that just like, now I need to take a month off or something. But it's so rewarding to like get to that finished,
Yeah.
the finished product where you're like, damn, like this went from a question mark to like, now look at my video, it looks badass. That feels really good.
That's the thing. I think a lot of people start from the other direction. So what we're talking about is what I think the right direction is, which is I have this creative idea. Like I have this thing that I want to see exist, this idea for a piece, a work of art, or it could be as simple as an animated music transcription. Do you have an idea, like a creative thing that you want to express, you want to see it exist? And you start from there and say, okay, what do I need? Like, what are the tools that I need? Like, how do I take what I know to piece some things together and like bring that idea into reality? Mm-hmm. And I think many people start on the other end, where they start with, okay, what are my tools? And with these tools, what can I make? And the tools should always be in service to like the art that you want to create. So don't start with, like this is my DAW and this is my video editing software and this is like, push all that to the side temporarily and think like, what do you want to create? What do you want to make? Like what's your voice and the thing that you want to say? Because then you will then have the motivation to power through all of those technical hurdles, but there's, a painter or a visual artist is not going around and collecting paints and then saying, all right, now that I've gathered up all my paints and my canvas, like now let me start thinking about the art that I want to make.
Right.
Start from the other direction. Start like what's the concept? What's the high level? And then, go out and get what you need to make that happen.
Now to break that down. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm saying that's what really like drew me into, after not having done any programming since high school, like that's what drew me to like pick up coding again. It's like, okay, the things that I want to make, like I need to make the tools because there's not off the shelf stuff for this. So let me then go like learn how to do that.
And on this channel page, for Dumb and Drummer, we really try to tie it back to like the all different drummers, like the self-taught, the people that went to school and things like that. So kind of walking that back, I would add that collaborations are absolutely huge on being able to move forward, because there's somebody out there that is the expert or as close to being the expert in whatever you're trying to accomplish. Right. And in my experience, those people have been super accessible. Like Instagram DMs, comment on a post, mail them a fucking letter, do whatever you got to do. But just ask people and say, hey, listen, I don't really know what I'm doing with this. Like I kind of, like we literally had this conversation a week ago where I'm like, I have this idea, which I'm not going to go into on here, but if it happens in 6 months or a year or whatever, that's fine. But I'm willing to put in the time and effort. And then also on that note, you have to be willing to be like, I gave it a shot. Like I tried this circle music rotation thing. It didn't work out. And that was a year ago. And now I figured it out and it's cool. But you can still learn things from that. Like what I learned from the whole Soundslice journey is I learned a bunch of music software that I don't ever want to use. I mean, and to me, that's progress. That's moving forward. So it's don't get discouraged and make sure you reach out to other people and ask, because there's something about, I don't know if it's a music community, but there's something about just being fully transparent and being like, hey, I really respect what you do. You look like you know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help? I literally haven't had one person be like, nah, I don't have time. Sorry. Yeah. There's nothing I do. They're like, well, have you checked this out? tell me more about what you're trying to do. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to do it, but I can try to like point you in the right direction, and then that's all that it takes is now you're in
Right.
the right direction, and now you're moving forward, and now you're getting your project done, and your vision is becoming a reality, and that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned too the collaborative nature, but also yeah, like reaching out to people who like are specialists. I think I think specialization is underrated. Like I think what I do is pretty narrow. Like there's a
It's niche.
huge, just like a huge ton of things that I just don't do. Things that I yeah, but I would really like to be like an expert, like the go-to person at something that is just highly specific. We've
Which,
talked
which,
about
which, which is what if you had to be like the guy
yeah.
for the one thing.
I think I think in Venn diagrams a lot, so which maybe goes against this idea of specialization, but
Well, there's the three circles intersect, so I mean you can choose
yeah.
whatever the
Okay,
thing
so
is in the middle.
if we're talking about like so three circles as an example, like musicianship for sure. Like I want like it's my first love, like staying close to musicianship, musicians, and the music community.
Mhm.
If we bring in a second circle to the Venn diagram, it is programming, technology, creative coding, like trying to be a resource for people that are looking to build things that they need a programmer for.
Mhm.
And then maybe a third Venn diagram is our third circle to the Venn diagram is kind of the collaborative, personable, like somebody to ideate with, somebody to like take ideas and develop ideas. I've kind of got this, bit of an entrepreneurial bent that can be just like, okay, how do we take this like seed or this gem of an idea and develop that and extend that to make something, to like bring something to the world that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, that's spoken like a true project manager. But I mean that's if you turn it into a here are the sprints and here are the goals for this the next 6 weeks and things like that. Then I
Mhm.
mean then you're running it like a business and then it's not just a hobby anymore. I mean
Mhm.
you're infusing some business elements to what you do as well. That
Yeah.
you're not just like I'll just sit at the kit and just film whatever comes to mind or whatever
Right.
it's very fly by night, fly by the seat of your pants type of deal. It's just not the way that at least my impression that you operate.
Mhm. Yeah, and that I mean, and that doesn't have to necessarily be just with you know one person by themselves trying to create a company. Like it can be entrepreneurial mindset in the context of a larger established company,
Hmm.
um, or with an like even just a band or a musical ensemble, like thinking about uh, I mean, I think developing a piece of music, developing art, and also developing a product, taking something that does not yet exist,
Hmm.
coming up with an idea, developing that, and bringing that to the world. Yeah, I really enjoy that.
That's I mean just you saying that kind of makes my brain hurt like slightly. Just to try to put all that together because you're also in order for it to be marketable, it has to be something that like people actually want. I mean that's
Mhm.
cool that you came up with a new like self cleaning crock or something like that. But I mean like if people don't want it, like
Mhm.
it's how are you? There's no marketability. It's awesome to you and no one else cares. So it's like that's where, and I think this is kind of we could go off on a tangent on this, but like social media in general, like how are you relating to your audience? How are
Mhm.
they connecting with what you're doing? And that's the people we follow. That's the content we engage in, and that's the content that entertains us the most. Is we're like, oh, you know, it's like my favorite comedian. Well, he tells stories that are relatable, and that's the reason why I think he's
Mhm.
hilarious. Like, because he gets down on my level. Like, he's not he's not on an island or something like that. So
Yeah.
that's the struggle. Is like, yes, all this stuff is cool. How do I take that concept and make it cool to like the people that are on my page and the people that are going to
Right.
find me online. That's huge.
Yeah, you got to be authentic, like if it's something that is interesting to you, it's something that's solving your own problem, you're much closer to, you know, it being something that solves another person's problem or another person finds interesting. Also, that number of people is like nowadays with the internet being what it is, and all of the different platforms, like that number of people is much smaller than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be like widely accessible. You could be, you could be like, if you really just need like, it's like 1,000 true fans, like 1,000 people who really love what you make. And
Yeah.
uh you don't necessarily need to have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who just, they like your stuff, but it's not their favorite. And I think as we dive like deeper and deeper into our niches and do things that are just much more individualized and like people being like themselves, which
Yeah.
means there's only one of you.
Mhm.
Yeah, like it's probably going to narrow the audience more and more, and that's okay. Like, as long as there's a certain quantity of people that like absolutely love your stuff, support your stuff, and yeah,
Yeah.
it's viable.
Makes sense. Uh, what drummers or artists have provided you the most motivation? Like who do you look up to? Who are your, I hate to use the word idols, but the people that kind of keep you going.
Yeah. That is tough. Like, my musical tastes are widely varied. I do like a lot of jazz. My favorite musician of all time is Chick Corea, and it's hard to say that he is like just jazz. Like, his stuff kind of transcended genres, and he had a really long career.
Hmm.
So he had stuff that was, straight ahead acoustic piano, jazz standard sorts of things, but also, embraced electronics and did this whole, electric band thing.
Hmm.
And has collaborated, like, he's a great example of an artist that has just collaborated with a lot of different people across other genres. So I just kind of look at him as someone who managed their career really well, did like, was always trying to reinvent themselves. Um, yeah, he's not a drummer, but he's worked with some great drummers. Like, I remember very specifically my first exposure to Dave Weckl being those electric band and acoustic band albums that came out in the early to mid 90s, and
Hmm.
like finding those cassette tapes and listening to that stuff with headphones. And
Yeah.
it's just like so well produced, like, in addition to the melody and the harmony and just the complex rhythmic stuff being like music that I had never heard before, the level of production, I think GRP was the record label, and like everything on that record label, like with headphones, it's just so pristine and crisp, and uh it, like, years ahead of its time, is the sort of like production level that we have today with um electronic inspired pop music that's just so highly produced that it
Yeah.
has this like shimmer to it.
It's moving in a different direction. Yeah, definitely moving away from the every band has a keyboard and I am, very versatile in many different styles on the keyboard to how do we just sample this out? How do we just how do we get the most mileage possible on the least amount of original music? Like, somebody made the sample, yeah, but I mean, it's not, it's apples and oranges. Um, just out of curiosity, what when you think of Chick Corea, what is the first song or melody or something
Oh, it
that
has to be Spain. It's Spain.
yeah,
Like,
I know.
I think
I'm that
everybody. Yeah, of course.
yeah. It's like
Yeah.
that, or and maybe you know this offhand, and I'll probably have to Google it after we're done or something. But um, Dave Weckles' album. I think the album is called Master Plan.
Hmm.
Do you know offhand if Chick played on that? Because that song, he has a double drum solo with Steve Gadd in the song Master Plan, and
Oh,
it's like they're panned left and right.
yeah, yeah.
It's insane. So you listen to it like headphones are in the
Oh,
car, and it's like, oh my gosh. And my drum instructor in Virginia, Ralph Copley, was the first person to show me Master Plan.
yeah.
He made me like a mix CD of these
I remember that album. I remember that
great
album.
bars. And I'm like, I remember some of the piano solos, and I'm like, this has to be Chick. I mean, it's just like
Yeah.
so insane. But I didn't know if you knew offhand if that was. If
Oh, I
that
know
was
that album. I know that album well. I was in a drum corps in 1998 called the Marion Cadets, and our opener that year was Festival de Ritmo, which is from that album.
awesome.
I still probably remember the opening marimba lick. And yeah, I
Very
think
cool.
Jay Oliver. I think Jay Oliver. That might not be right. I think he was the keyboard player on that album. But
Okay.
you can definitely hear it's a lot of the same sounds. These a lot of like Fender Rhodes, electric
Yeah.
piano, Yamaha DX7, like all of these those same keyboard sounds, you know, and that same sort of role that the keyboard plays texturally. Like thinking about the keyboard, they're not exactly Montuno sorts of things, but the electric keyboard taking on a role in the ensemble that is like another percussion instrument.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I mean, there's harmony there, and maybe there's a sense of melody, but no, like it's a percussion instrument. Like it's playing very short and articulate things that they happen to have pitches, but no, it's percussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what I think. That's the reason why I gravitate towards, or one of the many reasons why I gravitate towards, is the percussive element. But yeah,
No.
that's amazing. Uh, Last question. As far as deciding what projects to do, like how do you organize your time? How do you say, okay, there's an idea? How do you stay organized? Like do you use a calendar? Do you put all your ideas in a? Is it all just kind of one at a time, or?
No, I mean, I know some people that do that, and I maybe I've done that in the past, like tried to be organized and like have this idea of, oh, I want to post X number of times per week and do X number of projects. But no, I feel like it's tough. It's tough because just constantly posting stuff, social media is like a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
And it's real easy to just focus on quantity and not necessarily quality. I mean, quantity can be a pathway to quality, but I'm at the point now where I'm hesitant to do stuff that I've already done. I've done a lot of videos that kind of follow the same um, template. And now it's like, okay, what can I do that's new, that's fresh, that's challenging to me, that people haven't seen, that is maybe just a new musical idea that excites me.
Mhm.
And some things take a really long time. Um, I posted recently a Konnakol transcription. This guy, Eduardo Rodriguez, he lives in Argentina. And he's doing a thing where he's reciting a conical composition, and he's got two different tala, like one in the right hand, one in the left hand. So two different time signatures, if you will. So the whole thing is it's either in 5 or it's in 10. And he's doing what in his right hand would be 5/8 or maybe 5/4, depending on what you consider the tempo to be. And then in his left hand is like 10/4 or 10/2. And he's got these two things going on simultaneously. And I was like, yeah, I could just do, a standard transcription of this like I normally do. But there's a really interesting compositional, like musical idea going on here that I want to try to find a way to visualize.
Mhm.
And it took many failed attempts. Like there's a lot of stuff that just ended up on the cutting room floor. And it took maybe a year and a half to finish that after many failed starts.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Yeah. But it's like working on it for a couple days and being like, I can't it's not here. It's not it. It's not good enough. And then just putting it aside and doing some other stuff and coming back to
Yeah.
it. But the thing that I came up with, and I'm super proud of it, is this again, this idea of like rotating circles.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like two music notation rotating circles, each with a different time signature, and then there's the third level of the
voice.
actual the voice part. Yeah. So that thing, like I wanted that thing to exist for like 2 years, and it just took that long to like figure out how to technically do it. And I did a lot of projects, between then, and just like, so there's a lot of things that are kind of in the queue where I maybe started at and stopped just because it was not good enough or just didn't really feel like it was right. But then at other times I'll like see something online, I'll be scrolling and it'll inspire me, and I'll open up my video editor and like churn something out in just a couple hours, and I'll like do something like in less than a day. And I really like those projects too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something about like, yeah, the hamster wheel thing definitely resonates with me. But there's something about being authentic, finding the balance between being authentic and not quantifying everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like you still want to, people want to grow their page. Like you don't want to put something up that you worked for a year on and have like 100 views or something on it. Like that wouldn't happen on your page, but like
I don't care. I don't care. Like I wanted it to exist that bad. Like if other people watch it or they don't, no, like it can't be my motivation.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying, like everybody's different, like
Yeah.
we do live in a world where everything's measured, and especially on social media, everything's overanalyzed with how many followers you have and how many views and likes and stuff like that. But it's very refreshing to hear you say, I'm doing this for me. That's been a recurring theme on several of our podcasts. Just, I mean, you can choose to cater to people and do what you feel like is going to get you attention and exposure, or you can just be authentically yourself and enjoy it and enjoy the process and learn and all that good stuff. But it's very hard to do both. So people that have, that want to see that growth, but they're staying authentic, may be going to the dark side. Like, hey, I'm kind of leaning more towards the page growth and less towards, me being me. So it's good that you're still in the authentic camp.
Yeah, and there's ways to do both. There's certainly ways to do both, and like I've heard a lot of people describe like, okay, so I'll do there's certain parts of this project or series of projects where this stuff is kind of made to be accessible and I'm thinking about a wider audience, and then there's stuff in there that is just for me and I'm the only one that's going to notice it. And like I'm just doing like, there are projects I do that I just do because I just want to see them exist. I also have like some pretty, I mean, in a healthy way, some like pretty compulsive personality traits. Like you have to be obsessed, I think, with some things. You're that way when you transcribe. Like, like you could certainly do a half-assed job and phone it in, but you're gonna spend that extra time like transcribing things to the nth degree that no one is going to notice. Like you're going to try to take something from like 99% to 100% and spend all that extra time that it would take when almost everybody is going to know if it's just 90% accurate.
Yeah. I've had that conversation.
Know.
I've had that conversation with other transcribers too, where it's just like, in some of these, Eric Moore, playing a drum solo and somebody filmed it on a cell phone. It's like a nightmare. I mean, it's like you can't differentiate between the floor tom and the kick. And I mean, he's playing so fast and the angle of the video is like the worst angle because he's like doing crossovers, but it's over like the camera's over his left shoulder and he's doing crossovers like on his right side, so you can't even see like what's being hit. So, yeah, I mean, my definition of phoning it in is like, it's not possible for me to see what he's actually doing, or like transcribing the Weckl Gad Caliuta solo, just Vinny's parts, was like, finding another video on YouTube that was way better than mine. I mean, not all transcriptions are created equal. Like everybody's gonna hear things a little different, and in the transcribing world, I don't know if you can hit 100% accuracy. I think people get close, and especially if it's your own piece and you're playing it and you're videoing it and you're producing it and everything like that. But transcribing other people's work, I feel like is splitting hairs sometimes.
Yeah.
Where it's just like I heard, maybe it's dynamics. Well, I really feel like it's mezzo piano. I mean, I disagree. I think it's I think it's piano. Okay, well let's or this is a decrescendo, or this is sped up, or this should be rubato, or this should be whatever. I mean, it's a rabbit hole, but it's part of the fun. It
takes a certain degree. Yeah, it's fun, right? Like most people would not find that. Yeah, it's also like scratching an itch that you. I don't know if it's just biological or if it's something that's been developed, but you kind of have this, mindset of like you're not happy unless it's correct,
right?
Yeah. We've talked about our differing approaches to transcription. So I'll often start by like scaffolding out a form. I will go and then find some bars here or there that interest me and start there. I'll hop around a lot. I will maybe, find a couple pitches that are sticking out and transcribe those, and we'll like gradually piece things in, but jumping around the composition all over the place. And I'll add like articulations and dynamics last. And I've heard you say that if you're transcribing 32 bars, you start on measure 1 and you transcribe it until like it's done with articulations and dynamics and everything is correct. And then you go to measure 2 and you do the same thing. And like then you arrive at the end and it's done. It's not like you're going back to. That's a very different approach. Is that still your approach?
If you tell me to go dig a hole, the hole's not already dug and the dirt's not next to it. Like you're the kind of like that's what I'm thinking of. Like if you're doing a job, you're gonna have to start somewhere and finish somewhere. Like, and you have the luxury of being able to do that with music. But like me, I'm just more of a black and white thinker. I'm like, all right, my shift starts at 8, and I get done at 4, 6, or whatever. Okay, well, I'm going to start at the beginning of, and work down. So I guess, I don't know, I guess I don't have a very, very good metaphor for this, but I'll take the video, put it into SoundSlice, and then I'll do the sync points. Like, I'll make the measurements. Because then because for me, like, sometimes I'll work on a measure for like 10 minutes and be like, God damn it, this isn't 7/8. This isn't, I'm hearing it wrong. Like if I went da-da-da, you're hearing on the top of the beat, but I'm singing it as a 16th note later.
Yeah.
I'm singing it on all E and a, E and a, E and a, E and a. But if I just go da-da-da, 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 da, it's like, well, I'm transcribing it wrong, and then you have to go back. So for time's sake, I like to have that skeletal structure, and then I'll go back, and with the animation, you can see how the animation actually helps me. Because I'm like, okay, I know he hit 7 notes before this next downbeat, and so I'm almost there, and I'll get the measure close, and then I like to go back and be like, okay, I think this is a floor tom and not a kick. I don't add dynamics to my transcriptions like ever, so I just do it because it's synced to the video. I actually haven't done one in a while because it's funny, because this moves away from it's more moves towards authenticity with me doing the transcriptions less, because 1, it's a lot of work. 2, I don't feel like I grow as a player. My ear and my eye get sharper, but my hands don't. And so I'm kind of, I might circle back to it. It's not really all that fun for me either, like, to be honest. like it's cool. Like, it's one of those things, like you were saying before, like it's nice that it's done, and I did it more for me. And it's kind of like you challenge yourself. Hey, can you actually do this? But like from a overall growth and mental health standpoint, it's not that great. Yeah. I would personally rather like, and this is what I tried to experiment with the last time I was doing transcription, is just take like a measure or two that I found interesting. Like to your point before, like, hey, it's a J. Rod Sullivan solo, but he played this thing that was really cool, and just break down just that fill. And okay, let's play it at a few different tempos. Let's put the music up and stuff like that. And instead of just a scrolling, 20 bar solo, you just have one measure, and you're like, okay, it's a 6-stroke roll, starting on the bell of the ride, 2 ghost notes on the snare, 2 ghost notes on the floor tom, and a kick. Okay, that's the first, and here's that, and then you play through it. Is much more interesting and accessible to an audience than like, okay, that's really cool. Everything went by really fast, and it looked awesome, visually, but I can't pause the Instagram video.
Mm-hmm.
Some people don't even know how to read drum music when they're looking at it, so it's just flashing on a screen, like, follow, share, save.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that.
It's still really good. So I don't want to say that I absolutely hate it, because
Mm-hmm.
I obviously started doing transcriptions for a reason, and I mean I kind of do that for my job now, at least
Right.
one of my jobs. So there's a certain element I still like. It's just bridging the gap between like, okay, I'm not selling these transcriptions, so I'm definitely not doing it for money. I don't really care about the money side of it, but like, how am I getting something out of this? Like as a
Mm-hmm.
musician, like
Right.
beyond just the 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 skill set of transcribing. Like how do I transcend the skill set of transcribing and go into, okay, I would like to take elements of your playing and ingrain them into my playing, and then be able to apply them. That's the biggest thing. Yeah, I can play all these fills, or I could learn from all these great players, but how does that translate to the music I'm making, like my band, or um, even fun videos I do, where it might be a collaboration, or it might be something off the wall. How can I ingrain that into the other musical projects? So that's something I've been trying to figure out and wrestling with for probably the last few months at least.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. I mean, your interests change, motivations change. Like if you're not adapting, if you're not saying, you know what, some time's passed and I've done this and now I want to focus on something different, or this doesn't feel as honest anymore. Like, yeah, if you're not evaluating that and doing that on a regular basis, you're not growing.
Yeah, it's exactly. Well, thank you for coming on, man. This was a great conversation,
This
and
is a blast.
I'm glad we could have it. We could make the time. So,
Thanks for having me.
so again, make sure you follow Eric on Instagram. It is percuss.io, and I believe that's the
Excited.
same YouTube, same Facebook,
Yep.
on all platforms. Awesome.
Great.
All right, man. Well, take care. Thanks everybody for listening. See you next time.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.